The black SUV smashed through the roadside barrier, rolled down the steep hillside, and disappeared into the raging river below. Within seconds, the roaring current swallowed almost everything, leaving only floating pieces of metal behind as thunder echoed across the dark valley. If you enjoy this kind of story, please subscribe, like the video to support the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'd love to know where you are watching from. And make sure you watch till the end, the best moments are worth it. Now let's continue. Far away from the busy city where flashing cameras and expensive suits filled every corner, the storm continued to rage through a quiet countryside. Most people had locked their doors and prayed for the rain to stop. Nobody expected that the storm was carrying a man whose disappearance would soon become national news. Early the next morning, 28-year-old Lena Brooks stepped outside her small wooden home carrying an empty basket. She planned to gather fallen branches before opening her little bicycle repair shop. Life had never been easy for her. After losing her father years earlier, she and her mother survived by repairing bicycles, growing vegetables, and helping anyone who needed an extra pair of hands. They did not have much, but somehow they always found enough to share. As Lena walked toward the riverbank, something unusual caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a large tree branch tangled between the rocks. She took another step. It moved. Her heart skipped a beat. A man lay half submerged in the muddy water, his expensive coat torn, his face covered in scratches, and one arm trapped beneath a broken piece of wood. "Oh no," she whispered as she rushed forward. The current was still strong, but she refused to leave him behind. Pulling with every bit of strength she had, she managed to free his arm and drag him onto the shore. The stranger was breathing, but only just. "Please don't die," she said, gently patting his face. There was no response. Without wasting another second, Lena ran to call two nearby farmers. Together, they carried the unconscious man back to her modest home. Her mother, Martha Brooks, looked surprised as they entered. "Lena, who is this?" "I don't know," Lena answered honestly. "But if we leave him out there, he won't survive." Martha smiled softly despite the worry on her face. "Then we do what decent people always do. We help first and ask questions later." They carefully cleaned his wounds, wrapped fresh bandages around his injured shoulder, and stayed beside him throughout the day. Late that evening, the stranger slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the tiny room with complete confusion. The leaking roof. The old wooden walls. The small fireplace. None of it seemed familiar. "You're safe," Lena said gently. He stared at her for a long moment before speaking. Who am I?" The question froze everyone in the room. "You don't know your name?" Martha asked quietly. The man pressed both hands against his head. Images flashed through his mind. Bright lights. A steering wheel. Heavy rain. Then. Nothing. He shook his head. I can't remember." Lena exchanged worried glances with her mother. "It must be the injury," Martha whispered. The stranger searched every corner of his mind, but every memory slipped away like sand between his fingers. His own name. Gone. His family. Gone. His past. Gone. All he knew was that his body ached and his heart carried a strange feeling of loss he couldn't explain. Lena smiled warmly. "Until your memory comes back, we can't keep calling you, hey, you." The stranger managed the faintest smile. "I suppose not." She looked out through the open window toward the rushing river. "How about river?" He chuckled weakly. "I've heard worse." It was the first laugh inside that little house in days. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, helicopters circled the crash site. Divers searched the river. Police officers blocked roads. Television stations interrupted their normal broadcasts. Ethan Cole, billionaire founder and CEO of coal industries, remains missing after yesterday's tragic accident. Rescue officials fear the worst. Inside the company's headquarters, employees stood silently watching the breaking news. Some cried openly. Others lowered their heads in disbelief. At Ethan's mansion, his younger sister, Olivia, refused to leave the command center the family had created. "They haven't searched everywhere," she insisted. "My brother is alive." "I know he is." Few people shared her hope. Even fewer realized that the man the entire country was mourning had just fallen asleep in a tiny countryside home, unaware that he was one of the wealthiest men in the nation. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole owned nothing. Not because he had lost his fortune, but because he no longer remembered it even existed. And outside that humble little house, someone hiding in the shadows had quietly watched everything. The stranger had survived. And for one dangerous man, that changed everything. Morning arrived with the cheerful sounds of birds singing outside the little wooden house. Sunlight slipped through the cracks in the walls, replacing the fear the storm had left behind. The stranger everyone now called River slowly sat up, feeling a little stronger than the day before. Although the pain in his shoulder remained, the confusion in his mind was far worse. Lena greeted him with a warm smile as she placed a bowl of hot oatmeal on the table. "Breakfast is ready." River looked at the simple meal. "I'm sorry. I don't have any money." Lena laughed softly. "Good. That means I don't have to argue with you about paying." He looked surprised. He looked surprised someone you don't even know. She shrugged. "My mother says kindness is the only thing that becomes bigger when you give it away." River smiled without realizing how deeply those words touched him. For reasons he couldn't explain, they felt different from the conversations he seemed to remember hearing somewhere else. The following weeks passed quietly. Since he couldn't remember where he belonged, River insisted on helping around the house. He repaired broken fences. He chopped firewood. He cleaned old bicycles before Lena repaired them. The villagers assumed he was just another traveler who had fallen on hard times. Some welcomed him. Others looked down on him. One afternoon, River carried several heavy sacks of vegetables for an elderly widow who struggled to walk. "You don't have to do this," she told him. He smiled. "I have strong arms. You have heavy bags. Seems like a fair partnership." The old woman laughed so loudly that nearby children burst into laughter too. Soon, River became known throughout the village as the polite stranger who never refused to help anyone. He fixed bicycles for children. He helped farmers repair broken tools. He even entertained little boys by pretending to lose races against their rusty bicycles. "You let me win," one little boy shouted. River placed a hand over his heart dramatically. "I would never. Your bicycle is clearly faster than my legs." The children laughed until tears filled their eyes. Even Lena couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, life felt peaceful. She noticed that River never bragged. Never complained. Never acted as though simple work was beneath him. What puzzled her most was his manners. Whenever her mother served dinner, he always stood until both women had sat down. He instinctively folded his napkin neatly. He spoke politely to everyone, even those who insulted him. It was obvious he hadn't grown up poor. Somewhere deep inside him, another life was hiding. Late one evening, River noticed an old newspaper lying on a bench outside the grocery store. Across the front page was the smiling photograph of a man. His heart suddenly began pounding. His hands trembled. The face looked familiar. Very familiar. Pain shot through his head. A glass office. People applauding. A private jet. Someone calling. Ethan. He grabbed his head. Another flash. A luxury watch. A long conference table. The name. Ethan Cole. Before he could understand what he had seen, the pain disappeared as quickly as it had come. Lena found him standing silently. River? Are you all right? I think I remembered something. What was it? I'm not sure. He looked down at the newspaper again. The page had blown away in the wind. Only a small corner remained beneath a rock. The photograph was gone. I almost knew who I was. Lena gently squeezed his arm. Don't force it. When the time is right, your memories will return. He nodded, although frustration filled his heart. That same afternoon, hundreds of miles away, inside the shining glass headquarters of Cole Industries, Marcus Voss stood confidently in the executive boardroom. He had been Ethan's closest business partner. Or at least everyone believed he had been. In reality, Marcus had spent years waiting for the perfect opportunity to take control of the billion-dollar company. Ethan's disappearance had handed him exactly what he wanted. With fake sympathy painted across his face, Marcus addressed the board. We must prepare for the future. If Ethan is never found, the company needs stable leadership. The directors reluctantly agreed. None of them noticed the small smile that appeared as Marcus left the meeting. Once alone inside his office, he locked the door and picked up his phone. Has anyone found the body yet? He asked quietly. The voice on the other end answered. No, sir. Marcus's smile slowly disappeared. No body means uncertainty. He stared out the window. Keep searching. I don't care if he's dead or alive. I want certainty. Days later, one of Marcus's hired men arrived in the countryside after following rumors about a mysterious stranger rescued from the river weeks earlier. From behind a row of trees, he watched River helping Lena repair a child's bicycle. He quietly raised his camera. Click. Another photo. Click. His eyes widened. It can't be. He quickly sent the photographs to Marcus. Only seconds later, Marcus's phone buzzed. He opened the images. His face instantly turned pale. The man everyone believed was dead was smiling in front of a tiny bicycle shop. Alive. Healthy. And surrounded by people who had no idea they were sharing dinner with one of the richest men in the country. Marcus slowly lowered the phone. Fear replaced confidence. If Ethan remembered everything, his empire of lies would collapse overnight. He looked toward the city skyline and whispered words that would soon place an innocent woman in terrible danger. Ethan survived. But this time, I'll make sure he never comes back. Marcus Voss stared at the photographs for a long time. Every image showed Ethan smiling beside Lena's little bicycle shop, covered in grease from helping repair old bikes. To anyone else, the pictures looked harmless. To Marcus, they looked like the end of everything he had worked to steal. He couldn't allow Ethan to remember who he was. He couldn't allow him to return to the city. Most importantly, he couldn't allow anyone to discover the truth about the crash. Marcus leaned back in his chair and picked up his phone. I have a job for you, he said calmly. Go to Brookhaven Village. Find the young woman named Lena Brooks. Make the town believe she's hiding Ethan Cole for money. The man on the other end hesitated. But sir, what if she really doesn't know who he is? Marcus smiled coldly. The truth has never stopped a good lie. A few days later, two expensive black SUVs rolled into the quiet village, raising clouds of dust behind them. The villagers stopped what they were doing and watched in confusion as several well-dressed men stepped out. One of them approached the town square carrying a large photograph. Have any of you seen this man? The villagers looked at the picture. It was River. He lives with Lena, someone answered. Within minutes, whispers spread through every street. River is wanted. Who is he? Why are rich people looking for him? The strangers wasted no time. He is Ethan Cole, one of them announced loudly. A billionaire who disappeared weeks ago. We believe he has been held here against his will. The crowd gasped. Mrs. Dawson, the village baker, shook her head. Held against his will? That's impossible. That girl saved his life. But rumors travel much faster than truth. By sunset, people who had once smiled at Lena now avoided her. Some looked at her with suspicion. Others whispered behind her back. One man muttered, maybe she was waiting for a reward. Another replied, or maybe she wanted his fortune. Lena couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had spent weeks caring for a stranger without asking for anything. Now everyone questioned her character. When Ethan, still known as River, heard the accusations, he stepped forward. She's innocent, he said firmly. She rescued me. I chose to stay. One of Marcus's men laughed. And who are you exactly? River opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Pieces of memory flashed through his mind, but they still refused to fit together. I think my name is Ethan. The man folded his arms. You think? The crowd exchanged doubtful glances. If you're really Ethan Cole, another man said mockingly, tell us something only he would know. River closed his eyes. Conference rooms. Glass buildings. A private elevator. Then. Darkness again. He couldn't answer. Marcus's men smiled. See? He's confused. Someone has manipulated him. Before anyone could say another word, police vehicles entered the village. The officers walked directly toward Lena. Lena Brooks? Yes. You're under arrest on suspicion of unlawful detention and attempted extortion. The entire square fell silent. What? Lena whispered. There must be some mistake. Her mother rushed forward. My daughter saved that man's life. One officer lowered his voice. We're only following the complaint that was filed. Handcuffs clicked around Lena's wrists. River stepped in front of the officers. Please. Don't take her. She's done nothing wrong. The officers gently moved him aside. As the police car drove away, Lena looked through the window with tears in her eyes. I didn't do anything wrong. River stood frozen. For the first time since the accident, something inside him snapped. A flood of memories rushed back. His office. His mansion. His company. Board meetings. His sister Olivia. And finally. Marcus. He remembered the argument they had the night before the charity gala. Marcus had pushed aggressively for a risky overseas deal. Ethan had refused. Marcus hadn't taken the rejection well. Then another memory hit him like lightning. Someone tampering with his SUV before he left. A mechanic he had never seen before. The brakes. They hadn't failed by accident. His eyes widened. It wasn't an accident. That evening, hundreds of miles away, retired Detective Harold Grant sat alone in his study watching a television report about Lena's arrest. Something bothered him. He had investigated highway accidents for over 30 years before retiring. The official report never made sense. Too many missing details. Too many unanswered questions. He retrieved a folder from his cabinet containing copies of newspaper articles about Ethan's disappearance. One photograph caught his attention. The guardrail damage. It didn't match the official description. Harold leaned closer. No. He quickly opened his laptop and compared accident photos with engineering diagrams. The impact angle was wrong. Very wrong. He whispered to himself. If the car didn't leave the road naturally. Someone forced it. At that exact moment, River looked toward the dark road leading out of the village. His memories had finally returned. He knew exactly who he was. And he knew the man responsible was still walking free. What he didn't know was that proving the truth would be far more dangerous than surviving the river. The morning after his memories returned, Ethan Cole no longer looked like the confused stranger the village had called River. His posture was different. His voice carried quiet confidence. Yet, despite remembering every detail of his former life, one thing had changed forever. He no longer wanted to be the man he had been before the accident. His first thought wasn't about reclaiming his company. It wasn't about his mansion. It wasn't even about the billions that had been stolen from him. His first thought was Lena. She was sitting alone in a small holding cell for a crime she had never committed. "I'm coming," he whispered. Miles away, retired Detective Harold Grant had already contacted the state police with the evidence he had uncovered. His reputation was enough to make investigators take another look at the case. Within hours, a special investigative team reopened the file. The deeper they dug, the more shocking the truth became. Traffic cameras had mysteriously stopped recording just minutes before Ethan's crash. Maintenance records for Ethan's SUV had been altered. One mechanic who had worked on the vehicle suddenly disappeared. Then came the biggest discovery. Financial investigators traced hundreds of millions of dollars that had quietly been transferred into secret offshore accounts only 2 days after Ethan vanished. Every transfer pointed toward Marcus Voss. When detectives obtained a search warrant for Marcus's office, they uncovered forged company documents, fake medical reports declaring Ethan mentally unstable, and private messages arranging the brake sabotage. The case collapsed in a single afternoon. Marcus tried to leave the country aboard a private jet. He never made it past the airport. Federal agents arrested him moments before takeoff. As television cameras rolled, reporters interrupted their regular programming. Breaking news. Billionaire CEO Ethan Cole has been found alive. Authorities have arrested business executive Marcus Voss in connection with attempted murder, corporate fraud, and multiple financial crimes. The story spread faster than wildfire. Back in Brookhaven Village, people gathered around the only television inside the local cafe. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They simply stared. The man they had shared meals with. The man who had repaired bicycles. The man who had carried groceries for elderly neighbors. Was one of the richest men in the country. Mrs. Dawson covered her mouth. "Our river." Little Tommy, the boy who had raced bicycles with Ethan, smiled proudly. "I told everyone he was fast." Even in the middle of the shocking news, several villagers laughed through their tears. Minutes later, the charges against Lena were officially dismissed. When she stepped outside the courthouse, she expected only her mother to be waiting. Instead, she found nearly the entire village standing there. Many lowered their heads in embarrassment. "We're sorry," the village mayor said quietly. "We believed lies." Mrs. Dawson stepped forward first. "I should have trusted the young woman who has never turned away anyone in need." One by one, neighbors apologized. Lena accepted every apology with grace. Holding on to bitterness would only keep the pain alive. Then another vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Ethan stepped out. For a brief moment, neither of them said a word. Finally, Lena smiled. "So, your name isn't River?" He laughed softly. "No. But River saved Ethan." She shook her head, pretending to be disappointed. "I'll admit it. You owe me an explanation. I owe you much more than that." Over the following weeks, Ethan officially returned as CEO of Cole Industries. At his first press conference, journalists expected announcements about lawsuits and billion-dollar recovery plans. Instead, Ethan surprised everyone. "I've spent years building buildings," he said. "Now I want to build people." He announced a nationwide initiative to construct schools, health clinics, vocational training centers, and scholarship programs in forgotten rural communities like Brookhaven. One reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Cole, why invest there?" Ethan smiled toward Lena, who stood quietly beside the stage. "Because when I had nothing, not even my name, the people with the least gave me the most. They reminded me that dignity isn't measured by a bank account." Months later, under a wide blue sky in the same village where everything had changed, Ethan and Lena exchanged wedding vows. There were no diamond-covered stages. No celebrity performances. No golden carriages. Children decorated the path with wildflowers they had picked that morning. The elderly neighbors Ethan had once helped sat proudly in the front row. The bicycle shop remained open that day because Lena insisted every child should still be able to ride home. As the ceremony ended, applause echoed across the valley. Not because a billionaire had married, but because two people had proven that kindness could accomplish what wealth never could. The town that had once mistaken Ethan for a beggar would never forget the lesson. Sometimes the richest person in the room isn't the one with the biggest fortune. It's the one with the biggest heart. Moral lesson. Life has a way of stripping away titles, wealth, and comfort to reveal who people truly are. Kindness given without expecting anything in return has the power to transform lives in ways money never can. Never judge someone by their appearance, and never underestimate the value of compassion. The smallest act of goodness may become the turning point in someone's life. In the end, character will always outshine status, and genuine love will always be worth more than any fortune. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below.